All right, so that was chapter two, and I thought it was important to talk about love in that chapter. The first part of the novel has three chapters. The first one's about home, the second one's about love, and this third one I'm about to read, uh, well, you're just gonna have to listen. So, chapter three. The speed of sound travels through air at about 760 miles per hour at sea level. Through water or steel, sound travels faster due to the field's higher densities. Up where the air is thinner, sound travels slower. Now, commercial planes cruise on average at 570 miles per hour. Impressive, sure, but not as impressive as the speed of sound in Houston, a mere 80 feet above sea level. The average speed, then, of a 747 divided by the speed of notes from a guitar solo traveling across the Miller Outdoor Theater is only 75%. That's a C. Picked that up from an Engines of Our Ingenuity episode on the FM one morning during breakfast at Mama's years ago. She has had the same apartment and breakfast table since before my younger sister was born. I don't remember moving to the apartment, but I remember eating steamed broccoli for the first time at that breakfast table. I also remember Mama teaching me how to light velas de oración on that table, using the long matches she also used for the stove. I remember her sipping yerba as she helped me with my homework. I remember her singing a lot, mostly tangos de abasto y chacareras santigüeñas. I remember, too, finding her slumped over the table a lot in those early days, hunched next to the telephone, crying alone. I would tiptoe over to her and hug her, and she would return the hug. After fixing her hair, she would clear her throat and make a smile so warm that it evaporated her tears. As soon as she was back on her feet, she was singing again. Sometimes she would even clear the table, stand me on top, and we would recite the songs from the CD in the car. Could be pop from America or classics from Argentina. No matter the song or the beat, I always tapped my feet the way she had taught me to, folklorically, with my heel and metatarso. Mi potro, she would call me, her foal. As she has had for as long as the same tablecloth, with one pastel-colored flowers. The one with pastel-colored flowers. I didn't know how she has kept its color for so long. When Mama got ready for work, I'd listen to the radio, trace the outlines of those pastel flowers with some sketch paper I always carried back in those days, and soon we'd be out the door so she could nanny other kids. One day, she came back with a kid, a baby, my sister Hélène. Mama used to tell me she had adopted her from another family, and I believed her, even though I could tell her tummy had been getting bigger, and not because of her cooking. Just before getting really, really big, she started singing fewer tangos de depre and more chacareras de alma fuerte. We didn't need to buy the new baby a crib. Mama had saved my old one. We did, however, need to bring home a booster chair so Hélène could join us at our table. Together for years, as I learned to feed her, she and I would make a mess of the steamed vegetables. Mama used to clean up after us, until slowly she stopped cleaning, and I got old enough to help around with more. The morning before I flew out to Amsterdam with Rick, I was seated at that breakfast table, eating leftover cold tortilla de papa. Mama told me she was planning to move to a smaller apartment when Hélène left for college. It turned into an argument because I joked about us not knowing when or whether Hélène would go to college. And right then Hélène walked in. And she started yelling about this and that, summer school, taking a gap year to find herself, mind your own business, and all I could think about was whether or not our coffee table would get left behind in the move. Houston is my tonic note, I wrote in a journal, waiting for Hélène inside her new old car. T-minus 2 hours. Ready to jet. I was chucking a handful of her dumb YA novels from the passenger side, along with clothes hangers, loose leaf papers, graded essays with A pluses written in thick gel pen up top, a handful of hair ties and an empty tissue box into the back seat. Hélène slammed the door. She got in and sat to drive. After turning the ignition, she tuned the stereo, found her senior year anthem car radio, and bumped it full blast before looking around the car floor for a bobby pin. ¿Reboleaste mis cosas?" she asked, fixing the hair tie on her wrist to her hair to make a ponytail, sliding a pin in to fix a few of her stubborn lemon-colored strands. "Podrías tirar un poco esta basura," I said. "Sos igual a mamá." "Ay, Mikhail, callate," she said, ignoring me, hungry. "No me dejaste ni un bocado de tortilla." We didn't talk most of the ride to the airport, only the sound of 21 Pilots on repeat. I blended their lyrics with those of Pink Floyd on a whim. We drove over I-10, I-45, 610, and 59, each highway like a breath to fill and then deflate. Summer was here, no hiding from the light. Outside it was green and vibrant, the hills, the swamps, the trees, even the shoulder lanes with rainwater. Even the tears rolling down Hélène's face were green. She told me she wished she could fast forward time, be old enough to come with me to Europe. I told her she should follow through with her plans because that's what one must do. Hélène thought about it, clicked her cheeks, and turned onto the airport's main boulevard. "By the way," she said, "¿qué piensa mamá de tu viaje?" She only looked out her bedroom window and pinched her crucifix, I told Hélène. Told me she would worry, like she always does. "Qué pesada que es mamá," Hélène said. "She's probably scared you'll run away like your dad did and never come back." I didn't make a comeback of her dad. Instead, I stared out of the window, thought about how Rick's dad had bought him his ticket, my head resting on the glass. When I pulled my head back, I drew a cross in the grease that was left there. "Mamá preguntó," I said after a while, "si iría a España a conocer el camino." "¿Y?" Hélène asked, nodding her head. "¿Vas?" "Quizás." "¿Qué quizás ni quizá, Mick? No seas friolento. Arreglátelas para ir, si nada te impide." I looked back out through the stain on my window, and with the side of my palm wiped the grease off. "El laburo," I said. "Quiero volver a Austin para empezar a laburar." "¿Te tomaron los de IMF?" "Más o menos, no sé. No me avisaron todavía." It seemed she had ignored what I'd said when she reached for, but couldn't find her tissue box. She cursed a bit, then wiped snot off her face with the rubber bracelets around her arm. "Si fuera yo, iría más tiempo. Iría a Barcelona. Casi me quedaría en Barcelona todo el verano. ¿Por qué no? Sería buenísimo." "Así nomás?" "Duh, obvio." She wiped her eyes. She opened her eyes wide. "Así nomás." Saw myself in Barcelona. Remembered Mama saying once she had spent her honeymoon there, and figured it would do me good to practice Spanish. Plus, Stephanie was going. "¿Y festejo mi cumpleaños ahí?" I asked. "Solo?" "Wait," she said. "Perderías mi cumpleaños también." "Whatever, solo cumplo 18, no importa. Anda, yo iría más tiempo." "Ah!" She banged on the wheel, shook her head, looked out the window, and with both feet stomped on the brake. We had reached the passenger drop-off. But I didn't want to get out. I mean, Hélène wouldn't unlock the doors, but I also didn't want to get out. She turned to me, face full flushed, and stared with all the intensity of her eyes. I did not look away. Not even when some security alcahuete in a neon green vest rushed at us to move through the carpool lane. "Keep moving!" Hélène opened the door. "We're having a moment here. Are you blind?" "You need to unload or keep it moving, little missy." "You need to keep it moving, chanchito." She smashed the door closed, turned to me. "Look, Mick." "Yes?" "Solo te dejo ir si me puedo quedar en tu cuarto este verano. Si es que no volvés." "Nena, abrime la puerta." She unlocked the door, popped open the trunk, and punked the man in the snot green vest. He flinched. Dale, Helen said. Déjame tu cuarto. No. Dale. ¿Para qué? Oh, Scream Festival, ATX 2013. Ew, corny. Why do you listen to? It's the best. Okay, fine, damn. I bucked on my backpack and tossed Helen the keys. You can have my room. As the keys clinked in her hands, she pealed. Muchas thank yous. I didn't know it then, but that moment was the beginning of a long series of symbolic gestures that accented even the most mundane happenings of my life. In the Porvenir, a ballpoint pen circling my name on a boarding pass to pass the first TSA security point. Making eye contact with a pair of jellybean eyes in an infant whose stroller overtakes you on a moving walkway. Sitting down between strangers, all Dutch and facing the same direction. Ignorant of the fact that our travel velocity through the sky is 3/4 the speed of sound. Or hell, incubating the egg idea that I could stay abroad forever. Celebrate my 22nd there. And all the remaining ones too. Spend them in Catalunia's capital on another whim because, truth is, nada me impide. Si nada nunca me impidió. Soon, as I have a moment to myself, I schemed, I'll book it there. It felt wrong and refreshing at the same time. Warm, tasty Spain, the freedom, the potential, the excitement of having no plans, just a roll of the vibes and some good old times. Only a handful of hostels booked between Rick and me, and then later with Alex when the kid fulfilled that term of his contract. But nothing between, nothing after that. A one-way ticket, baby, and on my dime. I paid it for myself, the carefree adventure. And now Spain, even more so. Maybe the boys would tag along, or they'd leave me alone. The trunk, gently closed by Helen, clicked. Are you going to find your future wife in Europe? She asked, walking me to the sliding doors. Maybe, I said, still distracted. We weren't the only ones at passenger drop-off. Friends and family all around held one another, arm in arm. So many. How many wives? Who was worth it? I'm not sure if I'm ready to settle down. Helen rolled her eyes. Yeah, right. Yeah-huh. Uh-huh. ¿Qué? Como... ¿Qué? Como tipo, you are chained to limerence. ¿Qué mierda es limerence? It means you think about love too much. You better slow down on the books, Helen. People might actually find out you're smart or something. Sos un boludo. That's my sister. Give me another hug. Promise me you'll come back, she said, nose buried into my shoulder. Even if you extend your trip. Promise. I did. She'd be in the back of my mind the whole trip. Promise you'll come back, she asked. I promise. Promise? Promise. Inside IAH, finally. Terminal E crowded in departures, arrivals, the same thing. I spotted Rick's dopey-go-lucky smile and a red mustache he'd carved that morning, yet backed by the same wavy red ponytail he's always had. He was swinging his arms, walking down gate by gate by gate, and carrying a big, clean backpack. We pressed each other's arms, almost to be funny, definitely to hear that slap sound. Then we waited for our flight to get called. Sharing a pair of headphones, Peter, Bjorn, and John's Writer's Block played track 1. The taste of wilted tulips this song evoked should have been a premonition, but at the time it felt less personal. Around us were the blonde Dutch Americans in zipper jackets, off to see the family. Groups of children, chaperones, retired old couples, shirts unbuttoned. So much. And in the middle, us. 2 freshly shaven city boys, who in no time would be scruffy knights. Off, waiting, watching as folks formed a line. An announcement, unattended baggage. And a security carrito beeping. My gear, a dark green 50-liter backpack strapped lightly over my shoulders, like I hadn't packed enough. And a bright green day backpack floating heavy by my hip, like I had packed too much. Ever walking, never snoring, all-encompassing, all exploring, forever forward and outcast, till I reach my home at last. Something like that. But how did those potatoes end up in my stomach undercooked? Would IFM hire me? What about Rick? What will he do? Where is he now? Rick turned to me and nodded. The question marks above our heads straightened out into exclamations as soon as we boarded. It was official. There we were. Not yet drunk, yet full on life. Time to fly at gate something something with our carry-on dreams and pockets full of hope. Stay tuned for part 2.